Okay, record now. All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at 7 on the dot. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here as we learn more about the potential curatorship of the Ash Grove House. We know that that's of interest to many of you. My name is Ben Boxer. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Park Authority, and I'll be your host this evening. I'd like to begin first by thanking our staff for putting together a virtual option. For those of you here, the meeting is being broadcast on Teams. A recording will be posted on our project website if you'd like to refer to it at a later date. And so I want to introduce first our evaluation panel. We really appreciate the time and energy they're putting into the evaluation of this application. We first have the chair of our panel, Stephanie Langton, our resident curator program manager. We have Elizabeth Crowell, our archaeology and collections branch manager. Michelle Meadows is a senior right-of-way agent with our land acquisition and leasing branch. Then we have Debbie Robeson, is with SWSG, and she's a program manager. And then we have Claudia Diamond with the Westwood Village Homeowners Association. Thank you so much. We also have another member of the panel who will be joining us online, David Gupta, who is our heritage conservation branch manager with the Park Authority. Also pleased tonight to introduce our applicant for this application, Sheila Consol. She is going to be presenting to us tonight and talking a little bit about her experience and her vision for this application. As we begin the presentations this evening, I'd like to invite members of the panel, members of the audience. Please hold your questions till the presentations have concluded. For those of you who are participating online, we'll get to you in just a moment when it comes to how to integrate your questions, as we do want to hear from you as well. So thank you again for being with us online. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Stephanie to give us an overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight and for your interest in Ash Grove and the Resident Curator Program. Some of you may have joined our virtual meeting last week where we introduced the process, but in case you haven't, and this is your first introduction, I'd like to provide just a brief PowerPoint presentation to reintroduce the basics of the program and review our process and touch a bit on the significance of the historic Ash Grove site. So for a brief overview of the basics of the program's ordinance can be found on Chapter 125 of the Fairfax County Code. The program was adopted to address the number of publicly owned historic buildings that are vacant or underutilized and needing significant improvements. So it offers a creative stewardship solution that brings a viable use and cost-effective improvements to these structures in a manner that is compatible with their historic nature, their historic value, and their public nature. And the way it does this is it allows the county to enter into long-term leases with qualified tenants who agree to rehabilitate the property in accordance with program standards and carry out ongoing maintenance for the duration of the contract. So the basic parameters, curators are responsible for all costs associated with the work. And in exchange, they're able to occupy the property rent-free. The curator's contribution is in the form of both payment for materials and services, and also in the curator's time and labor, their sweat equity. For a building to be eligible for the county's program, it must be listed on or deemed eligible for listing on the county inventory of historic sites. All improvements and any work carried out by the curator must be consistent with the national standards for the treatment of historic properties. These are the Secretary of the Interior standards as administered by the National Park Service. And because these buildings are public resources, the curators must provide reasonable access to the public, consistent with the nature and use of the historic property. So this typically occurs in the form of an annual open house. A very important component of the program is a document that's called a Historic Structure Report and Treatment Plan. It's two parts of a large document, and it's written by a professional third party, and it's used as a primary planning tool for making decisions about the treatment of historic buildings. So the Historic Structure Report compiles information on the history and significance of the structure. And the treatment plan details the existing conditions of the building, the approach to treating the building, and an outline of the required improvements with cost estimates. Each property eligible for our program gets one of these documents, and this is important for several reasons. First, it forms the basis of the curator's work plan as written into the lease agreement. It enables the program staff to monitor a curator's work in progress and track curator expenses. And it also enables staff to determine the length of the curator lease. The program uses an established formula to derive the lease term for each structure. And the simple calculation is it divides the annual fair market rental value estimated by a third-party appraiser into the total estimated cost of improvements, which comes from the treatment plan document. So leases tend to range anywhere between 10 to 20 years. And finally, the historic structure report and treatment plan is a planning tool that enables the program to maintain transparency and accountability as a public process. And so the document is currently available on our website. So the resident curator program as a public process, the process provides opportunities for engagement at each step from the application period for a property through to the selection of the curator. The first step is the property's advertisement through the program. For Ash Grove, we started in May. We made the application available on our website and put out notifications via press release, social media, RCP, stakeholder email. We received a completed application in July and then extended the application period for an additional 30 days to provide opportunities for others to submit. Once the deadline closed, there was a preliminary review, including a financial component. And for confidentiality purposes, that review occurs in our County Department of Finance. The successful and complete applications then move to the evaluation team review for scoring and ultimately selection. The evaluation team consists of relevant park authority and county staff. And so this is where we are now. The redacted application is posted on our website for a 30-day public comment period. And we are taking comments now through November 14th. Following the close of the public comment, the evaluation team will score the applications based on criteria we'll discuss in a moment. I do want to add that when the curator is selected, there is an additional opportunity for public comment. Once the draft lease is prepared and posted, there is a County Board of Supervisors public hearing for its final approval. So there are great opportunities to stay engaged and informed. And of course, each step of the way, we're updating our website and sharing email updates to stakeholders and information releases where appropriate to advertise for any public meetings. Real briefly, the selection criteria, the evaluation team uses an established criteria to score the applications, and this includes proposed reuse of the building. It's important to note that, as is the case with our other resident curator sites, the area to be leased to the selected curator will be the house and its immediate surroundings, so not to include other parkland. The remaining parkland will continue to be outside of the scope of the resident curator program and curator oversight, and will continue to be maintained by the Fairfax County Park Authority. We also look at the scope and nature of public benefit, public access. Typically, this occurs in the form of an annual open house, but it also could include a curator blog to showcase progress, curator-led workshops, if they specialize in a certain preservation skill, that sort of thing. We also look at the proposed rehabilitation plan. The applicant takes the tasks outlined in that treatment plan document that I mentioned and provides an anticipated schedule. We ask that the work is done within the first 5 years of the lease. And so the applicant is to outline their milestones and priorities for those years. We look at experience and qualifications. Does the applicant have any experience in historic preservation, related projects, project management? We look at the overall presentation and organization of the proposal. And of course, we look at the public response. So a brief snapshot of the program currently. The program oversees 4 leased curator sites. You can find out more information online, and I do encourage you all to visit the Resident Curator Program website to learn about these sites. There are virtual open house videos that were created in 2021 that take a closer look at least 3 of the sites with an opportunity to hear from each curator themselves about their experience. Currently, these 4 sites total over $2 million in investment, and we have just positively benefited the parks and the surrounding communities, having these sites occupied and improved and shared with the public in this way. So they include the Stimson House in Lorton, Turner Farmhouse in Great Falls, the Hannah P. Clark House, also known as the Yeti House in Lorton. There's also the Elmore Farmhouse in Herndon, and recently approved by the Board of Supervisors is the Mount Gilead House lease in Centerville. So a lease signing will be coming soon. So now if we turn our attention to Ash Grove, I'd like to provide a little context to the site, though I'm sure you're all very familiar. Ash Grove Historic Site is located between the densely wooded Old Courthouse Spring Branch Stream Valley and the Westwood Village Townhouse subdivision. The house is one of the few standing 18th century houses in Virginia that were built by the Fairfax family. Thomas Fairfax built the front section of the house around 1790. The 3-story tall house was 1 room deep with a center hall flanked by parlor rooms. Many other buildings were on the land to support the house and the farm. The 2 surviving outbuildings were built in the late 18th century. That's the square wood building that was used as a meat house, and then there's a larger brick building which was used as a kitchen. In 1833, Thomas Fairfax gave Ash Grove and over 4,000 acres of land to his son Henry Fairfax, and Henry and his family lived at Ash Grove until his death in 1847. In 1850, James Sherman, a New York farmer, bought Ash Grove with 241 acres of land from Henry Fairfax's estate. And for nearly 150 years, generations of the Sherman family lived in and preserved the Ash Grove house until most of the land was acquired by a developer involved with the construction of Tyson's Village and the residential communities. And through this, the county acquired the portion of it in 1997. So a good lot of information on Fairfax, the Fairfax family and the Sherman family exist. And for instance, James Sherman's son Franklin wrote about playing in a log cabin that was once Thomas Fairfax's and then later torn down. So the property certainly has a rich history prior to the construction of the house, and the house represents kind of an accumulation of the historical events over time. For example, there was a substantial house fire in 1960. Fortunately, just prior to this occurring, the Historic American Building Survey, HABS, had started its historical documentation with architectural drawings of the property. In fact, most of the original molding, windows, doors had been removed at the time, and as a result, they were preserved from the fire. And so the house was able to be restored based on the drawings and restored with many of the original architectural features. So you'll see on the screen here an estimation of the construction timeline of the house, along with the HABS drawing of the south exterior. The 1790s portion of the house was at the front there, possibly an earlier room behind, and then you can see the 1960s addition that followed the fire and during its restoration. So the house provides a neat opportunity for a curator to pick up the stewardship of this property and join the Fairfax family and the Sherman family and the heritage of this site. And this is why the resident curator program is really such a special program. The care that the curators give to this site really become part of the building's story and the next chapter in the building's life. I wanted to share just a few more photographs with you. You can see a view of the east side of the house during restoration in the 1960s, and then what it looks like today. You can notice the previous kitchen structure there to the right on the old photograph. We have another similar comparison for the 1960s image from the northwest during the restoration. I would like to take this opportunity to encourage you all to check out the virtual tour of the house that is available on our website if you haven't already, which is a good transition to our next steps. So we do have 2 live stream work sessions for the evaluation committee scheduled. The first is, if needed, on November 12th at 10 a.m. and the second is November 19th at 10 a.m. We also invite everyone to stay tuned to any notifications regarding updates on this process via our website, which is on the screen there, and we are taking public comment through November 14th. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and I appreciate your attention and look forward to answering any questions you might have during the question and answer period.
Thank you, Stephanie. For those of you online, I'll do this introduction blind, so we can get right to our applicant. This is Sheila Consul, and we'll hear next from Sheila.
Thank you, everybody. It's nice to meet you in person. Some of you I saw online, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk a little bit about me and Ash Grove and my hopes for helping save this amazing property. So I wanted to put this up first because I thought this was a great quote. If we don't care about our past, we cannot hope for the future. I care desperately about saving old buildings. So that's a little bit of my philosophy. So just an overview of me. I have been in Virginia, a resident of Virginia for over 3 decades. I currently live in Ashburn, but I've lived in Fairfax County for nearly 20 years. I work as a communications consultant. I am also an adjunct professor at Georgetown University in their School of Continuing Studies. I'm a dog mom. I'm a world traveler. I'm over 80 countries right now. That's a passion of mine. I'm a rabid volunteer. I do a lot of volunteering around the DMV. I'm a Commander season ticket holder, which of course was very exciting last night. And if you missed it, there was a good play. You should go look online for it. I am also a lighthouse owner, and I'll talk more about that because that's really where my preservation experience comes from. And as such, I'm a dedicated preservation. Right, so why would somebody want to become a resident curator? Probably asking specifically me, why would I want to be a resident curator? Well, I would love to help save another historic building. I have saved one and certainly learned an awful lot from that, and would love to be able to apply some of those skills and some of those lessons. My background in communication, marketing, branding lends itself to really exposing Ash Grove to a lot more people through what I do in my professional life. I enjoy giving back to the community, whether it's volunteering, hands-on activities. As I mentioned in my opening quote, I love historic buildings. And I have renovated a historic lighthouse. I'll talk a little bit more about that. My professional experience will contribute to developing a recognized brand. I think we all understand the value of brands and branding now and how that can bring in revenue, awareness, and a lot of different things we're looking for. Of course, this would ensure the future of Ash Grove, and I would be able to live there as my primary residence. Right, so my preservation experience. So I've always loved historic buildings. Oops. Yep, I've always loved historic buildings. My first actual purchase was one in Old Town Manassas on Battle Street. It was in the 1990s. I owned that house for about 5 years, did some historic renovation on that. A lot of it had been done, but there's nothing like pulling up old floors and redoing paint and everything else to get the blood running there. But my real preservation experience comes from purchasing Fairport Harbor West Lighthouse in Fairport, Ohio, which is about 20 miles east of Cleveland. I purchased this lighthouse from the federal government in 2011 through a program that they have, the National Lighthouse Preservation Act of 2000. As you can see in the picture in the top, the before is on the left, the now is on the right. If you can imagine, this lighthouse had not been occupied since the 1940s when the keepers moved out. It was vacant then for nearly 60 years. And because it's located in a state park and it's quite an attractive building, it had pretty much been stripped of a lot of its artifacts as well as practical things. And so it was in extremely poor condition when I finally took ownership of it in 2011. So it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of creativity. It's also off the grid, so it had no utilities. So that was really the biggest challenge with the lighthouse. And as you can see, it's out the break wall there. So it's not hooked up to any electrical, sewer, water, anything like that. So finding sustainable solutions to those issues was a very long and tedious process. And I'm happy to go into more detail if you want, but the utilities was really the biggest challenge, that and what I like to call the access. So as you can see, you can't drive up to this lighthouse. You can get there by boat, or you can walk through a state park. So everything that needed to be brought in for the renovations, all of the power utility or all of the mechanisms, all of the rehabilitation, materials, people, you name it, all had to either walk a half a mile from the parking lot, or we had to bring them in by boat, which is a very difficult situation. In a very short season, there's only about a 4.5-month season there in Northeast Ohio that you can really get much done due to the weather there. One of the things that's interesting about this lighthouse is it is on the National Register of Historic Places. So that was done by the Coast Guard in 1991. So they completed the application for that, which immediately meant it fell under the, technically the National Park Service, because it sits on federal land. That little block there, what I call the platform, is owned and maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers. So that is considered federal land. But in most cases, the National Park Service will defer historic property renovations to the states. So Ohio was my main state preservation office. So I dealt with them in terms of, what was best for the property, what they required, what they suggested, guidelines, all of those kinds of things. And I received an award from them in 2022, an award of merit for the preservation work that I have done there. Okay, so just a little bit about my professional experience, because that's going to play into this. I've been in communications, public relations, marketing in the DC area for 40 years. I have worked for corporations, nonprofits, trade associations, and government agencies. I provide a variety of consulting services to a range of clients. I also teach communications at Georgetown School of Continuing Study. I specialize personally in marketing, branding, outreach, media training, communications planning, crisis communications, and challenging environments. I'm a member of the Public Relations Society of America, the National Capital Chapter here in Washington. And I have a profile on LinkedIn if any of you would like to look at my professional experience in more detail. Okay. So one of the things that I have been able to do with my professional experience, combining that with the lighthouse preservation and restoration, is generate and respond to a lot of media interest. So this gives you a little snapshot of the media coverage that I've received over the 13 years that I've been working on the lighthouse. A whole range of angles of things, from small sort of human-oriented publications to obviously much larger business type things. No guarantee, but it's been an interesting side business to the actual preservation part of the lighthouse. So as far as Ash Grove goes, when I looked at the application and I looked at the treatment plan, one of the things that I wanted to do was really focus on the first year. And this is how I broke down what I would like to get accomplished in the first year. And depending on the process, I'm assuming that will be sometime in 2025. If any of you have been in the building and seen it, there's really only a little bit of kitchen there, a few cabinets, so that's really the priority of renovation of the kitchen and the connected den. Get that up to kind of today's standards. There's a first floor powder room that needs to be updated as well. Several of these rooms have very distinct design features from that 1960 renovation. So that's obviously not original to the period. But that's pretty much, you can tell the last time a lot of this stuff was installed and included. There's a main bathroom, which is the only shower tub in the house, so that needs to be renovated as well. There is no separate laundry room right now. There's a hookup in the kitchen for laundry, but I'm proposing making a laundry room out of one of the smaller upstairs rooms. The master bedroom has some floors that need to be refinished, and the master bath also has some old tile that needs to be redone. And then as you see the arrow left to right, all of these rooms might need painting, wallpaper removal, and plastic repair. And I know that there's some interest in the actual wallpaper that is there, so I'll make sure that that is, retained and cataloged and whatever might be needed as far as that goes. In the application, I have projected a investment of $112,500 for the first year. So basically for what you see on this chart. Okay, so after 2025, when the house is pretty much up to modern standards as far as livability goes, I look forward to the next year, 2026. Certainly, as we all know, in preservation, things that take longer than you often anticipate, just getting the right tradespeople, the right materials, thinking about what you want to do, all of that. So finish any uncompleted year one projects. Look further onto the treatment plan to see what's left and what's next from an obvious standpoint about what can be done in 2026. And then the ongoing general maintenance that's required in terms of whatever things happen that we all deal with as far as maintaining our homes. All right. So one of the things that I think has a great opportunity in Ash Grove is increasing the public access. There's a requirement for public access. There's been an open house. I also started an open house with my lighthouse. The first year I did it in 2012. I had about 50 people come through. Most of those people were people who were already in the park on the beach and just wanted to know sort of what was going on. We did run around town and put up little flyers and say, you want to come in. Of course, I just started renovations, so it was not in very good shape, but people had not seen that lighthouse open like that in 60 years. So, and about 50 people come through that year. This year, in June, when I had the open house, we had over 700 people come through. Next year is the 100th anniversary of the lighthouse, 2025, and we're expecting probably 1,000 people. Again, being a government building, many people look at this as something that they've never seen, they've never touched, they've never been through, that's just owned by the government. In the case of the lighthouse, it was in really poor condition, so it didn't get much love at all. So I have an open house myself for the lighthouse. One of the things I've done to that, I have tied it to a significant event. The lighthouse was first lit June 9th, 1925. So I set up the birthday party, our open house birthday party, every year around that date. So in addition to being an open house, it's a birthday party and it brings in a little bit of extra attention to that. And of course, I do social media for the lighthouse, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and X, and It has its own website. Speaking of website, that the middle column there is, I have a unique website for the lighthouse, which allows me to have a distinct URL that people can go look at, follow what might be going on, tell more of the story of it, profile me, ask questions, whatever it might be. And as I said, I also have Facebook, and I would also have Facebook and Instagram for Ash Grove. So those are some of the things that have been successful for me in the lighthouse, and then I would be posing for Ash Grove. The other thing that has been very successful for me at the lighthouse has been scheduled tours. People are always looking for something to do, especially if it's free. We're pretty lucky around here that we have a lot of free access things to do. But school groups, college students, DAR, folks like that are always looking for an activity, an event, something to do. So I would propose those kinds of things, doing scheduled tours. And then the other thing that I'm looking at doing are what I call promotion opportunities. And these are things that are related to the lighthouse, or sorry, excuse me, related to Ash Grove that I have done for the lighthouse and that have been very helpful in increasing the awareness of it. So a gift shop, any kind of little gifts, particularly those made in Virginia, Virginia agriculture, whatever. Special events, obviously the lighthouse, open house is the biggest special event, but other special events, unique website and social media, and then speaking engagements, having someone go out and speak, being me, about the house, the restoration, the preservation, the importance of historic preservation, all of that. So that is what I prepared for tonight, and I just give you this final slide.
Excellent. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you so much for that. And don't go too far. What we'll do is we'll first open up to questions from our evaluation panel. Those of you in the audience here and those of you at home participating online, please take note of your questions. We'll get to those questions as soon as we give the evaluation panel a chance to go through some of their thoughts. Please. Any questions?
Yes.
Will you be living in this property?
Yes.
The whole time, from
The
the
whole time.
start, or
Yes.
will you defer a little bit and then?
I mean, it depends on when I sell my current residence and when I move my stuff in and how much I'm willing to, live through some of the construction. I did a lot of that with the lighthouse. In fact, I didn't have water in the lighthouse for 9 years. So I used to have to go off to take showers and have friends help me out and all of that. So this property to me is a much more advanced stage than what I have done before. But my intention is to live in it consistently, yeah.
If you're having open houses for other than the people who live immediately around you, are you aware of the parking situation?
Yes. Mhm.
So you'll set up parking and,
Yeah, I talked, I think, on the Zoom call about shuttle coming in. That's what, if we ever had school groups, you know, we'd have to have a bus, you know, that would come in, that kind of thing. So, yes, because I've driven over there and tried to park myself.
And it was a problem, I assume.
Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's very hard.
I will say in the past, we have had a few open houses in relation to the resident courier program and advertising the property. And that's exactly what we did, is we offered shuttle opportunities to and from.
And the metro is walkable,
yes.
so that's a huge advantage that you can, you know, point people toward taking metro and walking over. Yes.
Well, you mentioned that, well, first of all, thank you very much. Sure. I really enjoyed your presentation. And I love what you did with the lighthouse.
It's been a long road.
I like the way that you did the kitchen.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't just a modern
No.
kitchen. It seemed to fit in nicely. For the gift shop,
Mhm.
is that something that you're thinking is going to be online only? Because I'm thinking about what kind of use groups you're gonna have when you're looking at like building codes.
Yeah, I haven't really explore that in terms of me having to have like a sales license or?
No, like, you're not gonna sell, you're not gonna have a retail gift shop in the house, it's all gonna be online, or were you thinking?
Well, I was actually thinking in the house, but I haven't explored anything further than, you go to most places, Mount Vernon, whatever, and you can buy stationery, and you can buy Virginia peanuts, and you can buy a T-shirt, and you can buy things like that. So it certainly wouldn't be a gift shop that people would come into unless they were going to the house or coming to the house for something else, like a tour or an open house. It wouldn't be a destination shop if that's.
Well, no, I was thinking more of, when you have to do your plans for construction, if you're gonna have a certain room that's gonna be the gift shop, and you're gonna have mixed uses in the house where you might have, commercial retail and,
Yeah, I hadn't really thought it through, just in terms of, having some items there that people might be interested in. As, a way to promote the house, have people remember, increase the brand awareness. Have, souvenirs, that sort of thing. I could certainly do both. If you have recommendations, if any of your properties have done this and have a way to do it, I'd be happy to hear that. For the lighthouse, I only do an online shop. And that's for a variety of reasons, because people don't want to carry stuff when they're walking and hiking and at the beach. So I only have an online shop that they can do.
and, you had mentioned school groups. What frequency were you thinking, and what ages? Is this like just college students, or are you?
Well, I was thinking more elementary to middle school maybe, and then college. And I don't have a frequency in mind. Obviously, I wouldn't start inviting school groups until the building is in good enough condition that, there's no danger, there's no risk or anything due to construction. What I do at the lighthouse is, I have basically a tour script that I've developed. People make appointments with me, they just send me an email or whatever, make appointments for how many people. They come out and I just walk them through each room. I give them the history of the lighthouse. I tell them what I've done in terms of renovations. It will be something similar to that. I would need to do more research to develop the script and all of that kind of thing, but.
And then, the DAR, what were you doing, were you offering programs with them?
Well, no, I know that the DAR did the plaque out front. And I also have a friend who's in the DAR here, who's on the Herndon History Committee. She lives in Herndon. And so you could have them come for a tour or have a meeting or something like that. I'm not in the DAR myself, but that's yours.
No, I wasn't asking that. I just couldn't, I just wasn't envisioning what that activity would be.
Yeah, just having them come and either have a meeting or maybe a tea or something where they can see the house and get an appreciation for, the historic nature of the home.
And then would you have shuttle for them as well, or?
I suppose it depends on how many people, again, when you're dealing with a group like that, you can also give them kind of parameters in terms of if they carpool or to bring or take metro or something like that. That a lot of times that's up to the group, how they want to actually get there. But yes, parking would be an issue. Yes,
And restroom facilities.
yes.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And I would like to piggyback off of Debbie brought up a good point about, with regards to the gift shop, the ideas about zoning or use permitted on the property. And also any potential parameters of, what's permitted through the resident curator program.
Right.
So those are things we'll need to consider, as well as you had mentioned social media with Instagram and Facebook. How that would be done would need to be
Yes.
considered as well, whether it would have to go through the PIO, our public information office before it can be posted.
Right.
similar to, we had a curator blog for a little bit for one of our sites, and that's how it had to be done, is the content would be kind of go through our organization. But yeah, those are just notes that I wanted to.
Yeah, sure. And most of those things come a little bit further down the track, because you're not necessarily ready to post photos and post pictures of tours of people and things like that right away. You know, you've got to do the restoration work first so that people aren't putting paint on them or crawling over construction or, you know, that sort of thing. You want to do most of the restoration. So I don't see a lot of that in the first or second year, probably after the restoration, most of the bulk of the restoration's completed.
Kind of back to the parking thing.
Yes.
Because, you know, this is where we live, you know, Westwood Village. I just would ask that there's maybe parameters as to the groups and how many people are allowed and how many cars can come in a certain amount of time, and just so that there's controls in place and it's documented. So that, you know, we're not all of a sudden surprised with, you know, 20 cars blocking the road, you know. I just would ask that that really needs to be identified for the community.
Yeah, I think I need to also take a good look at how the driveway and the current parking on the campus itself.
Yeah.
Is established, and then be able to say, we have space for 10 cars or whatever, so that any program, that would be the limit in terms of, so that we know that all the cars would be parked on the property and not be looking for space in your neighborhood.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I don't know if you know this or not, but the gates open and close as if it is parkland.
Yes.
So they open at 6 a.m. and they close at 9 p.m. every night.
Okay, so you can't get in after 9, but you can get out?
You can get out, you can get in if you have like a gate credential to get in, but somebody, or they can use the call box to call somebody to come in. But somebody can't just come in and get in after 9 o'clock.
Okay, how would I be able to get home after 9 o'clock?
Well, you would get, you know, like we provided the Fairfax, you know, they've got like 5 different gate credentials to get in, and, you know, of course, we put through the call box. And,
Yeah.
you know, you become part of the neighborhood. So that's how you would get in and out.
Okay,
But like, just kind of know that after those hours, if somebody's trying to get in, they could, you know, use the call box and call you, and you open the gate from your phone.
yeah. Actually, in the lighthouse, I have a similar challenge in that it is in a state park, and the gate to the state park opens at dusk and closes a half an hour. Opens at dawn, closes a half an hour after dusk. So I'm the same way at the lighthouse, where I can't have people coming in any later than, you know, if they come in for sunset, for example, they have to be out. That does have a gate that you can go out at all hours. You just can't come in
Right.
after.
You could actually, I mean, people can come in to see you. You know, they would just call you from the call box and you'd have to let them in. I don't think it'd be a time that you'd be entertaining groups of people at that time.
No, not that we
Really,
can.
that's kind of how. it would work.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But I would like to establish sort of a parking
Yeah.
schematic or something. And, you know, thought maybe about more parking
Yeah.
areas up there, depending on what, you know, the county feels would be appropriate on the land itself. But yes, right now, there's a little bit of tandem sort of parking
Yeah.
on site, but there's not.
Just wanted to define that hopefully, so that's part of the.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
What again?
Any other questions from the evaluation panel? So, oh, we have one more.
I was going to say, I'll just make a comment. If parking was being, if there was a proposal for parking being expanded, the property is very archaeologically sensitive. So we would need to look at that as far as any expansion of any kind of parking up there. Because the area is quite rich in archaeological resources. And also, I was thinking some of the comments that Debbie made about you know, the any kind of selling of things, I think you would have to, both from the perspective of what's allowed from the curator program, but also what's allowed in a larger sense, as far as zoning and code and stuff like that, I think would have to be looked into. And I don't know, it's not that I know a lot about it, but I know enough about it that it's an issue.
Sure. Do you know when the driveway was installed, the actual parking, hard surface parking?
I don't, but I
Yeah.
can check.
I was-
Only from an archaeological standpoint, it would be nice to know sort of when that was put in and did they look for any artifacts or were there any perimeters that needed to be achieved?
The
Before.
driveway would have been put in before the park authority acquired the property. And so there wasn't, at least as far as I'm aware, there wasn't any archaeology done prior to the installation of the driveway.
And I had asked about the school groups, also as a code issue. If there were a lot of them, then are we looking at, the code, the building being like an assembly use and it's more, requirements for like exit signs. and
Right,
things like
right,
that.
right.
So
Yeah, fire.
that was the reason for the question.
Yeah, no. And again, I put these down because they were sort of thoughts in my head for the future. A lot of those things I don't have, I haven't drilled into those details yet. But I definitely would like to look at the parking and see if there's a way to either square off some more or get something additional so that we can have more parking there.
There's a lot of room for parking. I live right there. I live on this, and I walk every day. It seems like the yard itself, if you built a sort of a parking lot, there's a long driveway there now, and I think you could probably get 10 cars, 15 cars. And
Yeah, I think that, but the park authority's concern is what are you doing to that land if you're gonna pave over a big
So
chunk?
you don't want to pay, no, it's really pretty, so you don't want to pay, it's kind of a balance
Right,
you'd have to achieve to have 10 or 15 cars and also preserve the beauty of it. It is actually extremely beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, if you walk up there and look at I think one is a smokehouse, or I guess a meat house,
One's a meat
smokehouse.
One's
The
a
other is a
kitchen.
kitchen, and you can actually hear right through there. So I'm coming mainly from, curiosity to see how it's gonna be preserved and, because I've never been in the house, it's locked. And
Wouldn't it be a shame?
I'm shaking. I'm shaking.
Oh, you tried to break in, huh?
I tried to get in, but I can't get in.
That happens with the lighthouse all the time.
I probably shouldn't be doing that, but are you gonna be going way, way back to the 1700s to try to get the period like Mount
For the
Vernon?
restoration?
Yeah,
So one of the interesting things about historic restoration, I'm sure that you all know, is that obviously to do a perfect restoration, I would have to go back to 1790, which would mean sort of having the kitchen back in the outbuilding and things like that.
yeah.
And that's not how we live today. So most of the time, at least my experience certainly with Ohio, and I suspect Virginia's the same, is that they want you, they gave up being like 3 R's. It's like restore, refurbish, renovate, or something like that. They don't want you to rip out, things that may be original, like hardwood floors and moldings and things like that. But they also recognize, I think, as most people who do this work, that we have to install things to make it livable to today's standards, right? Like there's one shower in this house. I'm not sure anybody would think one shower in a 4,000 square foot house is enough by today's standards, right? But it was back then and it wasn't that large. But so my plan is to embrace the colonial nature of the house in the designs that I do. But again,
It's a
to
question of
today's
degree.
standard,
It's a
Yeah.
question of degree.
it is a question of degree.
So you're not gonna cook in that out.
No, I'm not gonna cook
I
out
mean, it'd
there.
be wood, it'd be.
No.
um,
No, I'm not gonna cook out there. No, there is a kitchen that was put in the 1960s. You can see some of the photos online. It's got some beautiful teal aqua metal cabinets in there now, right out of 1960s. So it will have a more colonial kitchen feel, but modern. It'll have a microwave and a stove and a refrigerator and inside.
Granite counter.
Right, yes,
Oh, God,
probably
there
marble.
won't be history.
What?
There won't be history.
Well, if you look at the original, the original house, the front part was from 1790, then the back part was added on, right? And then as Stephanie said, then there was a fire, which basically took out a lot of it, which is where all this 1960s design came from. So the real original part isn't there anyways.
Yeah, I understand. You gotta, there's a certain amount of balance that has to be achieved and, but I've sort of fallen in love with the house. It's really very interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm glad, I appreciate your work.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it'll be nice to have a neighbor who appreciates the house.
I love history and I love Mount Vernon but I understand the parking. And I'm gonna be selling and I'm a realtor and it's all one big mixed bag, but yeah, parking is a big deal. You don't ever perceive this as being like a museum where
No.
people come all the time.
No, absolutely not, because it's my primary residence. It's gonna be my primary residence, so most of us do not have an open door company coming, let alone people you don't know coming in all the time. The Lighthouse, I made it very, very clear, there is a once a year open house. They come on June 7th, whatever it is, from 12 to 4. I staff it with volunteers. We put them all the way through the house to make sure people go up and down safely and around and answer any questions and all of that. Otherwise, it's tours by appointment. So I know who the people are, how many people are coming, when they're coming. And if I'm not there or I don't want to provide a tour, I don't. In that case, I own that and I can, say no. But again, I think it's a scheduling thing. Unless the county has certain goals that they want me to meet in terms of number of people who see it in a given year, I will track that so that in my annual reports back to the county, I can say we had X number of tours, X number of people come through, whatever it might be. But unless they're gonna mandate that to me and say, you need to reach, you need to have 100 people come through here, you need to have 200 people come through here. I think it's gonna go the other way.
Well, so that's a different ballgame. You probably have to have access to from not going through Westwood Village, because that is a big issue, and everyone, the bulk of the questions here have been pertaining to, concerns about traffic, concerns about parking. Believe me, I've had my car towed 4 times just by, maybe being late a half an hour, or one of my children, my 3 grown children try to park, they get towed, or they, it's a huge, huge hassle. There's no parking.
Right, which is why I'd like to get more parking on the property.
Yeah, okay.
And maybe I could lease it back to the homeowners association. Just kidding.
Actually, great fun. We're not above, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Any other comments from members in the room or members online who are joining us? Or we,
I have a quick question.
please,
Will the improvements include landscaping or hardscaping around the property? Or is that outside the scope?
It's not on the current treatment plan. So I think in the lease, it talks about maintaining the yard immediately around the house. But I don't know, Stephanie, unless you talk more about adding landscaping.
No, that's typically, landscape beautification would be a discretionary sort of investment that a curator could do if they prefer. The lease would be the house and then just the area immediately surrounding it, and the curator would be responsible for maintaining that area.
So can I ask a question? Because now we're going to talk about maintenance on the property. So currently the park authority is mowing around that house. Would that then become Her
The
responsibility?
lease would designate sort of we have to look at a map and look
Okay.
at where the area would be designated, where the curator would be responsible for that, and then where the park authority.
Yeah, I mean, because we actually do take care of some of your property there. I don't know if you're aware of that. We do it all around the spring house.
Okay.
So we maintain that, just for aesthetics and, just for the community. Otherwise, no offense, it would be overgrown if you all were doing it. So, I just want to make sure that, it's maintained as it is today and, whatever is the park authority's responsibility. We know what that is and, we understand who's responsible.
Oh, yeah, that would definitely be clearly outlined in the lease.
Yeah, and I want it clearly outlined because I do travel, and so I want to make sure that if I'm gone, somebody is, especially, in the spring or whatever, mowing, tending, whatever.
Yeah.
Whether I'm paying for it, the park service is coming, or park authority's coming back, whatever. But, so I want that, we'll need to clarify that in the lease.
Is the meat house in the kitchen?
The way we advertise the property is it could have been if the applicant would, if there was interest. But since it's not included in the proposal, we will continue to maintain, and oversee those two structures. Great.
Excellent. If I could too, for those that are participating online, if you'd like to enter any questions you have in the chat, please feel free to do so. We'll be monitoring that, can read those out while we get our last few questions through the room. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns about tonight's presentation? Please.
How do you keep up your financial reports, like the budget for the first year? How do you know you will exceed a certain amount of budget and then you can't get the first year goal completed? How?
So I have a spreadsheet that I did right now based on what I did for the proposal. And it tracks with that first year, so I have every line item, so like, the kitchen, this, and then under the kitchen, you have, cabinets, sink, and appliances, and floors, and lighting, and blah, 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 blah. And so I have budget numbers that I have plugged in now. Who knows whether they'll be accurate or not, right? I mean, we all do that when we do renovations, right? So, and it'll ebb and flow, depending on, again, what design choices I make and that sort of thing. So, I mean, that's how I track it, just like you would track your own renovations. But I will do an annual report at the end of each year back to the county. And that will show exactly what the expenditures were for that year, what they went to, what my budget was, my proposed, and then my actual, so that they know specifically. And then as Stephanie mentioned, there's some things that are optional, if I decide to do something that's not on the current treatment plan, or if we collectively, for example, decide we want to pave in some more parking, right now that's not on the treatment plan, so we would need to make the adjustments to that. And if I'm paying for that, that would go on, as well.
You will hire no contractor to do everything.
Oh, no, I will hire contractors.
Oh.
Yes, you have to hire people that
No.
abide by the building codes, electricians, plumbers, people like that, yes. Yeah, there's no question. In the lighthouse, for example, even though it sits on federal land, on the Army Corps of Engineers platform, it's in a state park. I do have to abide by the county building codes, so electrical, plumbing, all of those inspections. So everybody has to be licensed, verified, yes.
Any final thoughts, remarks, comments? All right, well, thank you so much, Sheila.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna come forward and we'll bring this meeting to a close, just with a few simple reminders. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. This has truly been a community engaged process. We're grateful for your comments, grateful for the comments we've received online. We do want to remind everyone who might be participating online, those of you in the room, that we do have public engagement open. We are accepting comments through our website until November 15th. And we'll be collecting all those and providing them to the evaluation team, who will be taking all that feedback into consideration as they evaluate the application. For those of you that do not have the email or the website address, it's engage.fairfaxcounty.gov/Ash Grove. And all that information is available on our website. Yeah, if you go onto the website, and just look up Ash Grove, you'll be able to find some of the information that we have available. And that is on the public input platform. A recording of this evening's meeting will also be there, so you'll be able to go online and hear your comments, hear responses again, refer back to it if you'd like. We do have several meetings remaining. The next one, if needed, is scheduled for Tuesday, November 12th at 10 a.m. And we will be updating our website with the status of that meeting as the evaluation team determines whether or not there's a need for that meeting. The final meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 19th at 10 a.m. and that will also be an online meeting. It will not be in person, so you can follow that meeting from wherever you are. I'd be happy to have you. Both of those meetings do not include active public engagement at the meeting. That is mainly a work session for the evaluation team to consider, but we invite you to watch. We invite you to continue to send your comments in through public input up through that November 15th day. Just checking my notes. I believe I've hit everything. Just quick reference to our project manager, chair, and excellent. So it looks like we've conducted all the business we need this evening. Wish you all a very happy evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.